All right, back again with another tactical preview because the semi-final of the FIFA World Cup is upon us. And yesterday we saw the first game between Spain and France. Game ended 2-0 in favor of the Spaniards. And I mean, yesterday I had projected that France were going to win. But of course, when you look at the game on the face of it, the Spanish came into the game with a certain system, a certain style, a certain determination. And the French, again, they were trying to rely on their individual brilliance on the day, which didn't really work out for them because once a couple of players were stopped in their tracks, it looked like they didn't have any answers to the questions that the Spaniards were posing on the day, and the Spaniards had their way, got the first goal through the penalty spot from Mikel Oyarzabal, and then deep into the second half, Pedro Porro, through that very elaborate play that they executed, got that second goal behind the back of the net, and it was game over. The French, through Didier Deschamps, did everything they could, brought on all the substitutes that they had on the bench to try and turn the game around. It didn't work. But today, we're going to see Argentina, Lionel Messi's Argentina come up against England in what can be described as a repeat or a revenge kind of fixture, because we know the history that surrounds the fixture between Argentina and England in history, and also the influence of some geopolitical context in this game. We're going to talk about all of that. My name is Joshua Holotu, and this is Onside with me. We're going to be looking at the game between Argentina and England, look at the perspectives, the previous meetings in competitive fixtures in the FIFA World Cup between the two sides. Then we're going to look at a tactical preview, how I think the game is going to pan out, how the two teams are going to set up, how they're going to maximize their strengths. We know Lionel Messi of Argentina, and then look at the English team in Hurricanes with Bellingham and what they've done throughout the tournament. Look, it's going to be a very interesting fixture. As to whether the winner of this game can beat Spain, maybe that will be a different conversation that we will have later on. But I think that tonight's game is going to be something that is worth watching. We may get a very similar, game in terms of entertainment to what we saw yesterday, but the scoreline may be different. When it gets to the time that I need to predict the scoreline, I'll get there and I'll tell you what I think is going to come out of this game in terms of the scoreline. But let's begin the conversation with looking at the previous fixtures between the two sides of the FIFA World Cup. Because in 1962, England beat Argentina by 3-1 in that World Cup fixture in the group stage. Then in 1966, when England hosted the FIFA World Cup and won it during that year, they beat Argentina by 1-0 in the quarterfinal. Then the very famous 1986 FIFA World Cup game between Argentina and England at the Estadio Azteca in the quarterfinal. We saw Argentina beat England by 2-1. The famous hand of God goal by Diego Armando Maradona, and also the goal of the century, where he literally dribbled through the left channel, got into the half space, and got that goal. Look, Diego Armando Maradona was the guy in 1986, and they beat England by 2-1. Then in 1998, when the World Cup was hosted in France, we saw how Argentina beat England by 4-3 in the round of 16 after the game ended 2-2 in normal time. And Argentina went on to win the game by 4-3 after the extra time was over. Then in 2002, when the FIFA World Cup was hosted in Korea and Japan, we saw how England beat Argentina by 1-0, courtesy a penalty by David Beckham. So this is the history behind the two teams in terms of the FIFA World Cup conversation. But also when you look at geopolitics, the two countries have been fighting over a small piece of land or a group of islands called the Falkland Islands. And if you know your geopolitics and your history very well, you would understand that both countries in 1982 fought a 74-day war that resulted in a number of casualties on both sides, where the two countries were trying to lay siege or lay control over the Falkland Islands. And currently, that island is occupied by a group of people that are of mixed, nationalities. And it's a very small island made up of about 5,000 people. And because of that war, the influence of it extended into the football conversation, where FIFA says that referees from England cannot referee games that involve Argentina and vice versa. So it's been quite a very contentious kind of situation, and FIFA has made or passed this verdict. So if you realize during this tournament, we've not had English referees officiate Argentine games, right? And it's for a reason. So Michael Oliver and the other English referees who are at this tournament, they are not allowed to referee Argentine games. I don't want to do so much geopolitics today because we have a lot to talk about in terms of tactics and all of that. But yes, this is the situation between England and Argentina. But a lot of people are talking about that 1986 Hand of God goal because it's been 40 years. And through those 40 years, look, Argentina have always been sitting on some form of tenterhooks because they know that when they come up against England again, it's going to be a different story. A different story in the sense that the English may be coming for a revenge, knowing very well that, look, they were robbed in 1986. So this is the time that they need to, come out and show the Argentines what they're made up of in the semi-final of the FIFA World Cup. That is one angle of the conversation. The second angle is that Lionel Messi and his Argentina are on their way to a second consecutive final. Check that out, because Argentina, having won the 2026 FIFA World Cup in Qatar, have moved from that team, still having a couple of their players available, but wanting to repeat that feat. And now they have France out of the question because France were eliminated yesterday. We are not going to see a repeat of the 2022 FIFA World Cup final, right? So they would be thinking that if we're able to get past England and we meet Spain in the final, yes, Spain may be a very tough opposition, but they have a sniff at the FIFA World Cup again and trying to win it a second consecutive time, which is something only a few countries have done in the history of the World Cup. So those are the angles, those are the conversations that are being had. But we are going to look at the tactics very soon, because I think that Argentina and England have played a very good tournament so far, and both have been tested in various respects, right? You look at Argentina, in the round of 32, they met Cabo Verde. Cabo Verde drifted them all the way into extra time before they managed to beat them by 3-2. Then we saw how they came up against Egypt. From 2 goals down, they managed to get the game to turn on its head, and they won by 3-2 in normal time, getting all 3 goals within a space of about 15 minutes. Of course, the controversy didn't stop. We saw how they won that game against the Swiss. The officiating on the day, if you ask me, was quite fair. People don't think so, but I think it was quite fair. That tackle on Bril Embolo and the resultant red card, the case of missing identity and all of that. Yes, I get those conversations, but Argentina have had a very scrappy road to the semi-final. And this could be their biggest test in the tournament yet, because they're coming up against the Thomas Tuchel side that all through the tournament won all their games. The only game they drew was against Ghana, that goalless draw in Philly. So look at Thomas Tuchel. When he selected his side, left out Cole Palmer, left out Phil Foden, left out Trent Alexander-Arnold, and almost left out Jude Bellingham, who has got most of their goals for them in this tournament. He was very brave and, very honest about what he wanted to do, what he thought was right to do with this English team. I appreciate the fact that along the line in the tournament, he has also been tested in one way or the other. When they came up against DR Congo in that round of 32 game, you saw how he considered very early in the 7th minute, the English team, but still found a way to engineer a victory in normal time, getting those goals from Harry Kane. Look, the English team also found a way to go all the way to the Azteca to beat the host nation, Mexico, in that very, very, very pulsating game that they played at a very high altitude. The players were tested really, really well in that game. And look at how they came up against Norway. After going 1-0 down, courtesy of shell drop, they managed to find a way to come back into the game. 2 goals from Jude Bellingham. He proved on the day that character-wise, charisma-wise, ingenuity-wise, he's the player to go to. And it would have been very disastrous for Thomas Tuchel to have left him at home had he decided not to go to the World Cup with Jude Bellingham. So both teams are coming into a fixture in the semi-final of the 2026 FIFA World Cup with all of these backgrounds, with all of these stories. And Look, your guess is as good as mine. It's going to be a very, very difficult game. I think that if we could see a game drag into extra time, it could be this game. I honestly think so. But at this point, let's go into the tactical preview because both teams are going to set up in a very interesting way that could get all of us to want to watch and see how they both execute. Yesterday's game between France and Spain and the way it ended taught all of us one thing, especially the analysts, that in the semi-final of the FIFA World Cup, you'd have to be very, very smart at the way you execute your game plan. Based on the opponent, based on the level at which you are at and the high stakes nature of the stage that is semi-final, you need to be able to come up with a strategy that helps you to triumph and helps you to be able to be a bit flexible. The French really struggled because all through the tournament, I think that they had adopted a certain approach to winning their games. They often didn't score in the first half. They would come back from recess and still rely on the individual quality of players like Michael Olise, Kylian Mbappe, Desiree Doué, Ousmane Dembele. Sometimes they would bring Barcola from the bench to come and get some magic for them. But this time around, those things were lost because players like Michael Olise, when he was taken out of the game, the creativity for the French side was gone. And you saw how Rodri and Fabian Ruiz had a game of their lives yesterday. Bossing the midfield, winning the battles, getting the passes through the vertical channels. Marco Correa in the half spaces, getting the crosses into the box. You saw how he won that penalty for the Spanish team yesterday. So look, you need to have your strategy right in a semi-final game. You can't play the semi-final like the way you played the round of 16, the round of 32, or even the quarterfinal. Else, you're going to have a lot of questions to answer at the end of the day. And yesterday, France, Didier Deschamps, that was his last game. Of course, there's a third and fourth game, but right after this tournament, Zinedine Zidane takes over, and we live to see how he begins to re-engineer this French side and what challenge they are going to put forward for themselves moving forward. But of course, let's look at the tactical preview for the game tonight because I think that the English are going to start with Pickford in goal, Ezri Konsa at right back, John Stones and Margehi in the center of defense, and then Nico O'Reilly to play in the left back position. The double pivots in Elliot Anderson and Declan Rice, with Bukayo Saka playing on the right hand side, Anthony Gordon on the left hand side, Jude Bellingham and Harry Kane playing right above him. Now, let's look at the Argentines because I think Dibu Martinez is going to be in goal as always. We're going to have Molina, Cuti Romero and Lisandro Martinez playing as central defenders, and Nicola Tagliafico playing as the left back, with Paredes playing right in front of the defense. And then we have Alexis McAllister, Rodrigo De Paul, Enzo Fernandez, Lionel Messi, and Julian Alvarez. So you look closely at this Argentine team, it's more or less a 4-1-2-1-2 formation, right? That also doubles as a 4-3-3, but operationally it's a 4-1-2-1-2 formation, and I'll come back to that. Let's look at the English because it's a typical 4-2-3-1 where they play Elliot Anderson and Declan Rice in the double pivot, and we have Jude Bellingham playing as a typical number 10. But the very interesting part of the English game is that there are times where they are operationally playing as a 4-4-2. So look at it carefully. You do realize that Jude Bellingham and Harry Kane playing over here are playing in such a way that they are very creative in the way they play. And I'm going to explain a couple of things that they do very shortly. Let's look at how the English are going to shape up when they have the ball. Most of the time you'd see that on the ball, you're going to have Anthony Gordon, you're going to have Declan Rice, Elliot Anderson, you're going to have players like Jude Bellingham and Harry Kane doubling in and around the defense area of the Argentines, pushing them a bit backward in this fashion and getting Lionel Messi and Julian Alvarez to be doing the runs in and around the channels, waiting for a turnover in possession. So you're going to have Elliot Anderson, Declan Rice, and players like Bukayo Saka all coming through this way. We have Nico O'Reilly also pushing up to keep the width on the left-hand side. Margehi, John Stones all pushing up a bit, with Ezri Konsa also pushing up to see what options he can provide on the right as far as the width is concerned. when they have the ball, one thing you can be assured of is that Elliot Anderson and Declan Rice will be looking to find players like Jude Bellingham who can now look for the runs of Harry Kane in the box to try and feed through the channels to get him to feed through the channels the ball to get him through on goal. And that is one creative way that both players, Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham play. The reason why you would often see them in a 4-4-2 shape is because there are times where when Harry Kane is on the ball, Jude Bellingham is being very creative to find a way to run into space, into the box to receive the ball from Harry Kane. There are times where Harry Kane himself would drift into the wide areas, carry the ball, try and play it into the box, and get Jude Bellingham to also rush onto it and get a shot on goal, a header or whatever it is. We saw something similar in the game between Mexico and England at the Azteca, where Harry Kane, he went through the channels, got the ball into the box, and then there was a Jude Bellingham waiting for him to pounce onto goal. And that is the creativity with the English team. Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham have a certain understanding amongst themselves. They are very patient in the way they play, making sure that when one has the ball, one is running into space and waiting patiently to receive from him. And I think that is a very good thing that the English have. But of course, that it could be easily detected today in that game that they're going to play with the Argentines, because I'm thinking of it this way. There are times where Nico O'Reilly, if he's able to get a very good coordination with Anthony Gordon in the left half spaces, then what is going to happen is that Anthony Gordon would have to try as much as possible to be able to get the crosses into the box as well, or he contributing into the attack, because that is one way they can be able to get some creativity from the wide areas also. And I don't want to expect Jude Bellingham and Harry Kane to continue that kind of play that they are doing. So the English would have to come up with more ideas. Anthony Gordon is not the strongest. He's not the one to engage in physical battles. So he would have to be very smart today if he gets the nod to start, which means that when he gets the ball in these channels, if the lanes are blocked for Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham, he would have to get the crosses into the box as fast as possible. He would have to release the ball to Nico O'Reilly as fast as possible, so Nico O'Reilly can utilize the width to get the crosses in or try and win some physical duel or some physical battles with players like Molina on the left half space. And that is very important, because one thing that the Argentines are going to do is that when they win the ball, they're not going to waste so much time. Once they win the ball, they recycle possession as quick as possible and get the ball to move vertically and faster, so that they can now create the decoy runs that Enzo Fernandez and Julian Alvarez are going to do to free more spaces for Lionel Messi to get into space and also get a shot at goal. So that is one thing that they really need to do. Anthony Gordon, if he gets to start, the mere fact that he doesn't have so much physical strength means that he needs to release the ball as quick as possible. On the left-hand side, if you ask me, I think that Bukayo Saka starts ahead of Noni Madueke. Madueke is able to drift into space. He's able to run into space. In terms of physical duels, you can trust him to be able to take his man here or there. But one thing that this game is going to promise to give us is that, psychological battle. If you don't have the mental fortitude to keep on going at your marker repeatedly without getting frustrated, then it may be a very contentious game for you to play. That is why I'll go for Saka. I trust Saka to have both the skill and the precision to get the crosses into the box and to be resilient with competing with players like Nicola Tagliafico on the right-hand space. Noni Madueke can do that. He would be able to do that. But I see him as a player who gets easily frustrated and doesn't keep his head in the game more often as he should. And that is one thing that the English need to work on today. You need to have your concentration levels at 100% when you're playing against Argentina. That has the ability to carve you open within a split second. So you don't want to put Noni Madueke necessarily in that space, because I want more directness. I want the ability of a player who can both go round and go inside to come in here and try and get a shot at goal. Because Bukayo Saka can do that. He's able to go through the channels. He's He's able to go around the channel into the box and take on his marker and dribble a couple of times, do some step overs and cut in as well. And he is able to come around and get a shot on target, from this area, So I would trust Bukayo Saka to play that kind of football for me today. And I mean, let me talk briefly about what the English could or must do when they lose possession of the ball, because I think that is what is going to be very important in this game. Of course, the counter press must be as quick as possible, because, for example, if Anthony Gordon loses the ball to Rodrigo De Paul over here, what Rodrigo De Paul would try to do is, aside preventing Anthony Gordon from stealing the ball back again, he would want to release it quickly to players like Paredes or Enzo Fernandez. Now, when the ball moves from this direction here, it is very difficult for players like Anthony Gordon to rush back to recover the ball. Even players like Nico O'Reilly will now begin to have to make those runs back into their channels to prevent the Argentines from moving very quickly. And this is how they need to set up. If Anthony Gordon loses the ball over here, then what it will mean is that players like Declan Rice would have to quickly try and close down their markers in this area, making sure that Elliot Anderson is also serving as a buffer, with Ezri Konsa closing in down over here and Bukayo Saka tracking his man at the left-hand side, and Harry Kane also coming back to do those. So it has to be a very well-coordinated run that the English team would implement. And aside losing the ball in such an area, right, which is just above the center circle on the left, there are times where in tackling Lionel Messi, they need to avoid utilizing a man-marking procedure, because in man-marking, what happens is that Lionel Messi is able to take on his marker one or two and place one or two dribbles and then carve the team open. So if you leave Ezri Konsa, for example, on Lionel Messi, then what it means is that Lionel Messi will find a way to always drift Ezri Konsa wherever he goes. And once Ezri Konsa vacates his position on the right-hand space, it becomes very difficult to get a defensive line cover in either John Stones or Bukayo Saka, because then if either of them move, then it creates more spaces for the Argentines to exploit. And that is where we are going to see the counter-attacking football that Nicola Tagliafico is able to pick the ball, rush into the spaces, get the crosses in and around, and then you get players like Enzo Fernandez and Julian Alvarez coming from the back to pounce in on them and get a goal for the Argentines. So this is how it must be, if you ask me. Lionel Messi, with how he's playing in this current Argentine setup, they don't play in such a way that the fixation is on Messi as the star man. They create a lot of decoy runs. They create a lot of chances with players running in and around the space. And when they get infringed, they get penalties. So if you've realized, in the two penalties that Argentina have missed in this tournament, they missed one against Austria, I remember. And I think the second one came in their very recent fixture against Egypt. You realize that Nicola Tagliafico had gotten the ball in the counter-attack, and while he was running into space, players like McAllister, Messi, Julian Alvarez, and Enzo Fernandez were also conducting their runs in the same way, trying to get the ball off the Argentines. And once the ball went through the channels and there was a cut in, you realize that Nicola Tagliafico, for example, was brought down in the box and it was a penalty. So they didn't necessarily put their highlight on Messi to carry the ball into the channels. They would allow players like Tagliafico to carry the ball, Molina to carry the ball, right? Paredes and Rodrigo De Paul also playing in the midfield, doing everything they can to carry the ball forward. And when they get into the channels, then they try to cut in. Then you get players like even Paredes or even Alexis McAllister create those dummy or decoy runs, and then Lionel Messi finds a way to get the ball at the back of the net. So Messi becomes the last resort. Of course, he contributes in the build-up, because when they get the ball, they release the ball as quick as possible. They don't spend too much time on the ball. So it's quick 1-2 passes, 1-2 passes, 1-2 passes, moving the ball as fast as possible to carve you open. And that is the thing about these Argentines. They try to play very quickly, and that is how they are able to get something to work for them in games like this. So that is one thing that the English would have to be very, very, very cautious of. When you vacate your position, you need to be very sure that you have a man to help you to cover up, especially when you're tackling Lionel Messi. So if Lionel Messi decides to drift deep to pick up the ball and there's a Declan Rice following him, once Lionel Messi picks up the ball and he begins to move around and Declan Rice finishes his purpose of tracking Messi down, he needs to get back into space and allow a player like Jude Bellingham to take over and press Lionel Messi. So it should not be a one man doing all the hard work of tackling Lionel Messi, because that's a very difficult work to do. Once Lionel Messi picks up the ball and releases it as quick as possible, let's have various English players playing different roles at the same time, right? And that is what will help the English team to be able to curtail those Lionel Messi runs. Another thing is that in times where the Argentines are chasing the game, they have a strategy where they allow Lionel Messi to become more or less the feeder. So he feeds the ball into space, or he feeds the ball into the box, or he's able to get the ball into a certain overloaded or concentrated area. And when there are aerial duels being fought, he now comes actively to contribute into the attack. He did the same in the game against Egypt. In the 2 goals that they scored before the winning goal, you saw how Lionel Messi got the ball from the wide areas, lifted the ball into the box, and then when there were aerial duels being fought, he now actively moved to contribute to the attack. So in those situations, you are unsuspecting of Messi because you are seeing him as the one who effects the kick, effects the free kick, effects the cross, and your attention span is on the aerial duels that are being fought in the box to prevent the goal. If nobody's watching Messi, the ball comes back to Messi, comes from behind, and he gets the shot at goal. And that is a very tricky strategy that the Argentines use. So if you want to tackle Messi, you need to be very smart. You need to be very smart, you need to be very quick, and you need to be very alert. Your concentration levels have to be very high. But this is a semi-final, and like yesterday's game, for all you know, it could take a different approach. If both teams would approach the game differently, what I suspect is that, of course, you would find Jude Bellingham and Harry Kane playing the same way they've played through the tournament, because that's where their goals have come from. That's where the strength of the team is. But the wide areas in Anthony Gordon, Bukayo Saka, in players like Nico Riley, right? I would want to see more from them in this game. Nico Riley, Ezri Konsa, if they are going to keep the width, with Anthony Gordon and Bukayo Saka attacking in to get more shots on target. So perhaps it doesn't necessarily have to be a game of crosses from the English into the box to get Jude Bellingham or Harry Kane to pounce on it. Let's get more shots from Harry Kane. Let's get more shots from Jude Bellingham. Let's get more better and quality shots from Anthony Gordon and Bukayo Saka. And that could help them or create the magic for them, so that if there's a rebound, then we have Jude Bellingham rushing into the space to get the rebound on goal, or Harry Kane to do so. So Bukayo Saka more shots, Anthony Gordon more shots. Let's get a because when you watch the game that the English played with the Norwegians, we saw something like that. In the winning goal that Jude Bellingham scored, it was a shot from Morgan Rogers from outside the area. Then it was spilled by Nyland, and then Jude Bellingham rushed to get that shot on goal. You don't have to necessarily walk the ball into the net, because this is a semi-final. The moments will count. If you're able to take advantage of the spaces that are created in front of you, and I like Jude Bellingham because he's able to do that sometimes. Out of nothing, he's able to look at the goal and he's able to engineer something. And I think that this is a game where he would be called into action the more, because he would have to present the English with more ideas on and off the ball, so that they could get an early goal that would help them to settle into the game and perhaps play the kind of football that they can play against the Argentine. Of course, they're not going to respect the Argentines so much. I don't expect them to do that. But I expect them to be very careful and cautious because you have a Lionel Messi in the team that can use just a split second to carve you open and it could be game over. On the other side, for the Argentines, of course, quick flowing football. Lionel Scaloni is going to emphasize that in this game. He's going to allow them to just do anything on the pitch. Yes, you have Lionel Messi, but if the games against Cabo Verde, against Egypt, and against Switzerland are anything to go by, they want to be very careful with how they start the game. You can't start the game on the wrong foot. You have to start the game with the intention of getting an early goal so that you can settle into the game. So it could be a battle of who gets the early goal. Get the early goal, settle down in the game. So once you get the early goal and you settle down, it gives you more control, gives you more courage, right? It gives you more confidence to play the game and send the game to your opponent. Look, to be very honest, I think this game is going to be very difficult. Not because of how both teams are going to play, but because of what is at stake. So the English want to go to the final for the very first time in a really long time, and they want to win the FIFA World Cup. Look at Thomas Tuchel and what he's done with the team. I can understand that it's going to be something that a lot of us are going to be looking forward to. And look, I think that England, if they do their things well on the night, they could surprise the Argentines. Yeah, that's what I think. If they're able to get their act right, keep their focus, their intensity, they are not, afraid. They don't exhibit any form of cowardice. I think they have what it takes to beat the Argentines, and that's just my observation. I wouldn't be shocked if Argentina qualifies to the final because I think at this point they would have learnt a thing or two about how they are playing and how it could help them to move forward. But this is a team that still has some weakness or so, if you ask me, and it could do with their concentration, but the mere fact that they have Lionel Messi in the mix is something that makes them very lethal, and it could just go anyway. But I'm tipping England to win this game. I'm tipping England to win this game. I want to see an England that puts up a fight, that develops courage and a fighting spirit on the field of play to be able to see out these Argentines. Yeah. And I think Thomas Tuchel has the ability to do that because when you look at the changes he even made in the game against Norway, very tactical changes. Most of them were not like for like. So you could tell that in various stages of the game, he had a certain objective that he wanted to achieve. And that is a hallmark of a coach who really takes notice of what is happening on the pitch in terms of the moments and how the game is drifting away from him or how the game is coming closer to him and how he can be able to engineer something to win the game. If the players don't disappoint him, I think he should be able to win. Because there are times where Anthony Gordon and Marcus Rashford, when either starts, you get them faltering for most parts of the game before they are able to get their rhythm or find their feet. It can't happen today. If Marcus Rashford starts, he would have to be on the front foot. And I would expect him to be very direct when he gets the ball. Don't attempt to dribble too much. Get the ball, quick passes, move into space, get a shot at goal. As many shots as possible, get it on goal. And I think that could help the English if they really want to win this game and get to the final. So I think the English win by 1-0, even though there could be more goals. Because, you see, it wouldn't be a conservative kind of football. I don't see any of them playing very conservatively. If there's a team that's going to play more conservatively, I think it's England. Because they would want to close those spaces, remain quite compact, so that players like Lionel Messi, Julian Alvarez, and Enzo Fernandez don't find a way to get the passes through on goal. But if they have to be offensive, then it means that at the back line, they will have to adjust the spaces with which they move forward. So McGahey, John Stones, right, the way they move forward, the way they approach the game, it will have to be in a well-calculated, well-coordinated manner throughout. You can't lose concentration even for 1 second, else you get punished. And I honestly think that is how the game could end. So yes, let me know what you think. I honestly feel the game is going to end perhaps 1-0 or 2-1, or 3-2 in favor of the English. So listen to me. It could be 1-0, it could be 2-1, or it could be 3-2 in favor of the English. And if Thomas Tuchel is able to do his things well today, he's able to inspire the boys, he's able to get them to calm down in very tense situations, he's able to get them to be very resilient on the pitch. Even if they go down one goal, they would have what it takes to still find their feet and get back into the game and win it. And I think we should see an England win today. This has been Onside with me, Joshua Hollow. So please subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on your post notifications. Anytime I drop a video, you're going to be the first person to see it. And until I come your way again, I'll see you in the next one.